Our next contest of the Better Photography Weekly Challenge is The Unusual in the Usual. Our judge and mentor is Parth Gupta.
Hello.
Hi. He's a photographer based out of New Delhi. Parth's vision could be set around the abstract architecture of our surroundings with the delicate focus of a humanitarian lens. His main focus with photography is to document his life, spaces around him, moments experienced, and people met. Apart from being the visual aficionado that Parth aims to be, he has previously worked as a project manager at Blink Media Inc. and as a documentary photographer. He was awarded the National Media Award from the National Foundation for India for his work So Much Water, So Close to Home, which documented the grim ground realities being faced by Punjab's farming community. Currently, Parth is experimenting with digital manipulation to push the boundaries set around photography in an attempt to artistically and pragmatically explore the duality of spectrum of his mental health condition. Hello and welcome.
Oh, thank you for that intro. The unusual in the usual. Interesting theme. So, it is in the everyday intricacies of mundane where lies the unexpected and absurd, unusual of life. Absurdity is all around us. Life, in its essence, is an absurd entity. For this brief, for this challenge, you don't need to have anything, super high-end budget to make absurd images or find absurdity. The key points, that will be in for considerations for the submissions will be, something unusual, not an everyday occurrence, an aspect to ponder on, timelessness, eerie and yet poetic, something that lingers on in your conscious, while also showcasing elements which highlight your inherent creativity. I listed down some tools and techniques which can be considered as a guiding point. Of course, your submissions do not need to be limited just to these. Please feel free to explore and use these as like a starting point. The aim of the following images is to show different techniques, varying image aesthetics and approaches that can be used for the challenge. Experimentation is key because when you start doing so, I feel your mind gets attuned to seeing the world from that perspective, which enables your unique creative approach to further blossom. You want to be playing around with techniques and aesthetics. So, reflections, compositions, and juxtaposition, capturing the perfect moment, creative use of light and shadows, abstract use of objects, shapes, subjects, slow shutter, using flash. And in my opinion, the best of all, just mix it all. So starting with reflections. So let's over here, like with reflections, they're fun to play around with. And I've always found it, personally, I've always found it very, joyous to like sort of experiment with them, try different angles, try different perspectives, try different things. But what is a lot important is to maintain the illusion of sort of that quirky weirdness, like what's going on around here, something to like confuse and intrigue the viewer. It shouldn't seem very forced. And also importantly, which sometimes I feel that people forget, is the retouching of images should also be overdone because it helps maintain that sort of illusion between real and not, and sort of that reflection illusion. So let's take this image, for example. So this was a self-portrait during my early years of experimenting and, trying to look from different perspectives. So this is a photograph. As you can see, it is a reflection But so this is at my home, which we have a big reflective window, and there was this cloud on a bright sunny day, and I took a portrait, self-portrait over here. This is the camera, which I tried to hide very well, but could not. And then inside the house, there was also a mirror, which is creating this sort of silhouette over here as well. So creating that sort of multi-layered illusion, which makes you go, okay, how did that happen? So again, like being aware of all the elements that are around you or in the image to use them to the best of their visual possibility. And moving ahead, so these are again some images. These are mainly simple, but again, like I feel quite powerful. Like this image over here, that is simply a reflection of a puddle with the, reflection of the tower on the puddle. But what I love over here is how that reflection with where the slightest water is there, it is also getting, reflected over here, and it sort of merges with the sand that is on the ground over here. So again, like creates that illusion that I've been talking about. This image from Devashish, it's like, again, a simple approach to a reflection, but like he closed down he zoomed in on the car, saw this reflection, which creates this sort of weird shape. Like you see it, but like you still need to keep on seeing it to make sense of it. And that's what I love about this image. This image over here, again, like a moonlit sky, background, was these buildings, and, we just place this with the interior of the room. Again, creates a very good elusive aspect to the image. These two images are, again, like I said, reflections are so much fun to play with and experiment around. This image by Charalampos Kaidonakis, or Dirty Harry, like definitely suggest all of you to check him out. But it's a simple thing, like a mirror there, some objects here, but the way he's played around with the hand, with the head, it's such a quirky, funny image to look at and makes you go like, oh, what the hell? This beautiful image by Swapnil Jadhe, such a simple but such an intriguing image. Like you can see it is a reflection straight there, you can see it's a mirror, but like still that sort of pictorial graphic aspect of this image really intrigues you to look in more deeper and really appreciate the image. It's such a poetic, timeless image. Moving on, again, another image by Charalampos. This is again simple image, reflection, some water bubbles there, but again, like taking that image in that way, make that sort of weird reflection over here, and then that circle distortion over there. Like what a creative way to take reflections, I feel. This is Costis Focus, who I recently discovered. His work when it comes to like body and absurdity, the way he merges body, his own self-portraits, and how he uses different elements to maintain the sort of elusive aspect of, absurd body language, if I must call it like that. But yeah, again, simple flash, put like a reflective tray, and you feel like his hand is just coming out of the tray like that, and how he's also hidden his hand over there to maintain that perspective of reflection. Such a smart way of photographing. Okay, moving on, composition, juxtaposition, and moments. Now I feel over here in the images also, you'll see it's a lot about perspectives and sort of being patient and waiting, like being very observant of what sort of elements are around you and how to use them from an unusual way of sort of seeing, like the way you see, and you'll sort of see that sort of creative side blossom in the following images also. So this, this was shot in somewhere in Kolkata, I'm forgetting, but like I saw this person like around over the fence, bending down. And it's a bit of a funny image, I feel, because of the way the fence is there and how his body language is merging with the uh, statue of the animals. And again, like creates that sort of illusion again of what's going on there, like what is that, and takes you a bit more, of taking 3-4 more seconds of looking into the image where you feel like, okay, oh, that's a person who's bending down, but like the way his shape is and everything, it all sort of comes together. Again, another image by, oh, so sorry, Charlampos. Like over here, like I was talking about perspectives, you can shoot this image, you could have shot this image from a top perspective, but he went down on the ground level of the person over here. And it seems like the person's top half is just placed there and nothing else. It's such a great way of maintaining that sort of perplexing perspective, right? So that's again, like, experimenting with different angles of point of view, top, medium, ground level, or, like from low to top, trying different angles to get some unusual perspective. I'm sorry, like it might seem like I'm fanboying over Dirty Harry, but his work is mind blowing. Again, another image like this is, seems it like on the first go you go do like, okay, what's going on here? On the second go, you see like, oh, that's what the image is, because you can see the person's face. But again, maintaining that sort of initial curiosity is also what's important. Like the way the bodies are merging over here with the head, and simple photograph, nothing too much of the technique, just photographing a moment, So it's always important to be observant of the people, of the surroundings that you're in, and just have your camera ready, be it phone or be it a camera, a proper camera, like doesn't matter. But so again, it's all around us, you just have to be looking. Then this image by Prashant, I find it again a lot of fun and quirky, like just a person, sitting there taking a lovely daytime nap, and then his finger goes like boop, and so nice to see that, like again, creative self-input, and create such a nice sort of false perspective of like a giant hand coming and booping the person to wake him up or something. This image by Vineet Bora, again, simple, but what I love about this image, of course, like composition, like, the dogs over there, the way the dog is merging with the fur of the other dog over here, right, perfectly. But also the colors, the way they are, like, again, so very simple, but again, like having such a good aesthetic and maintaining that sort of good juxtaposition element of illusion. Now moving on to light and shadow. Now the following two techniques I want to explore more. I want to talk more about simplicity. Like, things don't need to be very complex when taking these images. You can keep it simple. You do not have to do, many different types of techniques, try this or that. And like maybe certain times, things, the most beautiful images are created by the most simple use of techniques and objects. So starting with light and shadow. So again, another image by Dirty Harry. So as you can see, like that's a sun flare, lighting up the eye, and the rest of it is just in pure shadow. Like it's a very it's an underexposed image, but that sun flare, the way it comes up on the eye, so beautiful, simple and beautiful. Now these two images, like now it's also how you use objects around you, right? So this image is just a stop sign somewhere, and I just stood next to it because of the way the shadow was coming, and then used my hand like that to create that sort of form and shape. So, like taking multiple images, sure, but like sometimes It's just these simple shapes that you can create to sort of keep on pushing that elusive, absurd angle also in your images. This image by Jack Davison, again, over here, we know like the shadow is definitely, the intriguing point, but I love how he's also showing the way the hand is there that is creating the shadow and not just the shadow, because that creates such a good element over there. And all in all, just an image of the shadow probably might not have worked as strongly as this does, but to show that and then yet create that angle or perspective of absurdity, right? That is the key point today. So unusual absurdity. So I absolutely love this image by him. And then light and shadows more. Again, simple images over here by Sohail and Honey. Like he saw these two flowers and like just took a self shadow portrait, and it seems like they're blossoming from him. Nothing, nothing too complex in terms of lighting technique or anything, but just a simple, pure portrait. And I might even call it his self-portrait, and such a good way of poetic light and shadow use. I love this image. This one also, again, like technically it's a very simple image. It's a shadow and the hand coming through, but again, the illusion that it creates, like the hand is coming through the shadow. It's an intriguing one, So again, different ways of how you can use light and shadow. Similarly here, a person's leg just coming out of the gate there and the shadow popping out just like that. And, makes you stop, makes you wonder like, okay, what is that? And, even the shadows, the way they create that sort of geometry over here also creates an angle of interest, and piques your interest, piques the viewer's interest, if I must. Yeah. Moving on to a bit more of simplicity, abstraction. Now, this is a very famous photo. A lot of people have seen this, I'm sure, by Matt Stewart, but it's till days, every time I see this photo, I'm just like, it's so simple. It's just a leaf on the ground. Yet every time you look at it, your first thought is, those are lips. But I do not know, like I still find it perplexing how it is, like to photograph something as simple as a leaf, because we see leaves all around us every day, but to photograph it in such a way that they still maintain that illusion every time you see it of a lip is such a good way of seeing. And also, of course, the angle and all the techniques, simple techniques that you can use. But again, so good, this image. Now, again, over here, I will sort of also add the creative use of techniques. You can always use different techniques to create that sort of elusive angle. So like Jack Davison, sorry. He focused, I think, somewhere around here, and the rest of it, the way his, wherever his camera was in front of behind these objects and these objects being in front of the camera, and with that face, I think on a print or on a cloth something. But again, it's creates a good, unusual approach. You look at that and it's such a good, aesthetically pleasing image, but also maintaining that sort of elusive absurdity of like, what the hell is going on here? These two images by, Sagar Chhetri, simple, like, this is a close-up of a finger, but again, such a simple abstract image and such a simple use of fingers, the sunlight, the small, that flare coming through the reflection, that blue tone, again, so poetically pleasing. This image is, like some really white object, I'm guessing, that has been placed here, and the highlights over here are sort of burning out. but again, it makes you feel like there's a hole in the ground, makes you question what that is when you first look at it. So there's such great creative ways of approaching everyday objects that are around you. Like sometimes, like I said uh, initially was all you need to do is experiment through different ways, like use different techniques, use a different angle, use a different lighting method, maybe, try a flash, try going closer, try going further. It's all about playing around until you find something that satisfies your hunger or desire for that perfect image. Now, moving on. So this image, first I'll talk about these two. Ashima's image. So again, this, it seems like it is almost digitally created, but it is on a surface, a background surface, where this, I think it's a butterfly or a different winged insect, which is sitting over here. And it seems like it has been digitally placed, but of course it isn't, as we can also see the surface texture. But again, a simple, centered line, an insect over there creates that sort of extra element of simple but unusual elements of objects in your images. This one also, like it seems, if you look at this image, it seems like as if the roses have been placed in the background, hiding behind this sort of old cloth, but something unusual coming out of such a raggedy cloth, and so beautiful. Moving on to this image. So now this image, as you can see, these are people playing volleyball, and like I stayed around there waiting for like, I don't know, 30 minutes, just taking photographs with them, and found certain images which worked out very well. And this was among one of them, where the hand position was something so caught, of course, between moments of them hitting the ball and everything, but like the hand position is something so unusual of how you see people's hands to be, So again, creates an elusive aspect, and the ball, which can be the center focus, and then this hand. Okay, moving on to this. Now this part gets a bit technical, slow shutter and flash. But again, here is where you can also, your experimentation and creativity can really thrive, I feel, because there's so much scope. And I have been experimenting with slow shutter and flash for so long. It always, every time I experiment with it, I am always I'm left, pleased to the approach every time you can create something magical. And so starting out with this image by the master Trent Park. So this image, of course, well lit, but then there's this person who you can see is slightly opaque, but there's also some light painting that has been done. Like, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the technique light painting, where you take a particular torch or a light source and you sort of do a bit of light painting on the objects that you want to highlight. So that's what he's done. As you can see with the zigzag sort of lines there, over here as well, and how they're shining. And this person almost looks like a ghost, that has come to welcome you. Moving on. So over here in this particular image, so here is the very technical aspect. So over here, you can see this person and this person is the same. And this is not a multiple exposure or double exposure. This is a single image, one single image capture. So what I did over here was basically the flash fired twice. Once in the beginning, then there was a 5-second shutter release, and then the second flash fired, right? So that's what happened over here. So that's how I got this light trail also that you can see around the person's face. That's why this face has also come around here. And this face is also there. So again, different ways of approaching this. So you can always, try taking self-portraits if you have a flash, or like even if, and this is all with just on camera flash, nothing external, even with the most basic things that you have, like you can photograph this. So go ahead and definitely try with the, I think is the rear flash setting on Nikon, at least that I know. So try experimenting with that. It's a great way of making more images and beautiful magical images. This image is a slow shutter, I think around 2-3 seconds. It was at some ritual procession, and like the way the person's face has come around like this. Again, I did not do technically much. There was enough ample lighting. I was just playing around with the shutter, and I've got this one very final, very beautiful image where his face, person's face, finally rests at the edge, almost at the edge over here. And it's such a good way of traveling the eye to the eye over here. So that's why, yeah, this is one of my favorite images of that I have taken. Yeah, so yeah, that's the reason why. Again, by another image by Jack Davison, similar approach over here, slow shutter. Like there's a person over here, and the lights are going through like this. He's not used a flash, it's slow shutter, and I think it's a moving object that the person's in, and the way the light streaks flow through like this, it creates this sort of like dynamic movement like we have here, so like similarly like this, like going from left to right over here, and again creates this very intriguing subject matter over here because of the way the lights are. This image by Vivek Singh, again slow shutter. So I think the camera has been moved upwards like this, but it seems like like something sort of exiting the horse over here, very eerie, but again like very eerie and yet poetic, beautifully captured by Vivek. This image, again, the similar technique that I explained earlier of using the flash. Similar technique here with the rear flash setting on the camera, where the flash gets fired twice and with a shutter opening for 3-4 seconds. So there was this, forgetting what it was, but some dance going on, and there was a crowd in the background, flashed, first flash, and then the second flash captured this. That's why it comes on more prominently. And that's why it feels like the legs are only there. Again, creating a very elusive aspect to the image. This image, technically, so this was the first flash that was fired here. So, and because the person moved from here to there, that's why you can see that sort of, the body, like those lines going like that because that's how the person moved. And then when the second flash fired, this person came along on the top of the camera, and that's how we got this image also. So again, that sort of fleeting, like the person or like a ghostly appearance of like someone moving through, it's what makes this image. And finally, this image, simple image, but creative use of flash. Like I fired a flash which was covered by a red cellophane sheet, and I fired it over here from a distance, and then we get this sort of a really nice red, unusual sort of red color over here. And yeah, like again, this is one of the most simplest techniques in the slow shutter and flash technique category, but again, something which is very, not an everyday thing, where you are also using a technique very creatively to create something unusual out of the usual. And that was all. I hope that gave everyone a good idea of how to approach the theme. And well, best of luck. I looking forward to seeing everyone's submission soon.